don't seem to understand.
This video will contain spoilers for Serial Experiments Lain. You can watch it for free on YouTube. There's a link in the description. When I think of Serial Experiments Lain, the first thing I picture is eyes. Throughout, there are many long shots of people looking directly into the camera, often in extreme close-up. Lain's understated but unsettling art style often makes it hard to determine how these people are feeling, and the extended eye contact with the viewer is a big part of the show's creepy atmosphere. Today, we'll be discussing the meaning behind the human eye in Serial Experiments Lain. The protagonist of Serial Experiments Lain is, well, Lain. Lain is a 14-year-old Japanese schoolgirl who, over the course of the show, learns and comes to terms with the fact that she is the physical embodiment of God. In the show, God encompasses the thoughts, memories, and especially the connections of everyone on Earth, as represented by the Internet, or the Wired as the show calls it. When Protocol 7, the newest version of the Wired, was released, it included secret code planted by a man named Masami Irie, which allowed people to connect to the Wired without a device, utilizing Schumann resonance. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that right. Irie used these connections to create Lain, a being who would have read-write access to all of the data now flowing into the Wired. Eyes are used many times in Serial Experiments Lain to express a variety of ideas related to Lain's transformation. First, they indicate perception. In the world of the show, perception is reality. We experience reality through our perception of the world. So for all intents and purposes, my perception of the world is my reality, just like your perception of the world is your reality. Two people can observe the same event and have completely different viewpoints and emotional reactions, but both are based on a subjective understanding of the world, which can never be truly objective. This idea is made literal in the show. It's why Lain can manipulate objects in the physical world by accessing people's minds. The nature of the Wired and its relation to the real world is discussed by several characters who have very different opinions. The Men in Black think the Wired and the real world are separate and must remain so. Irie views the Wired as a higher layer of reality, overlapping and exceeding our physical world. At the conclusion, Lain sees the Wired and the physical world as interchangeable. Everything is just information. These characters all perceive the same network radically differently, much like how different characters perceive Lain differently. Irie and the Knights see Lain as a tool for their own ends. The Men in Black see Lain as a dangerous resource to be directed and controlled if possible. Arisu sees Lain as a lonely girl who needs a friend. The show is largely about how Lain sees herself. She progresses from a normal girl to understanding herself as a non-physical consciousness, and this understanding gives her incredible power. The importance of these different viewpoints is reflected by the use of eyes. Lain's eyes are distinct from every other character of the show. She has pinpoint small pupils, which makes her look slightly uncanny in the same way that a robot that looks almost human seems uncanny. The rest of Lain's design, though, is very appealing. The pupils indicate that Lain is not like us, but the rest of the design, and the suffering the writers put Lain through, leads us to feel for her. The small pupils are also a subversion of the huge eyes that anime and cartoon characters usually have. While Lain's eyes are oversized for a real girl, her pupils are incredibly tiny, which undercuts the traditional appeal when seen in extreme close-up, which the show does all the time. It's possible Lain's small pupils represent her limited worldview, but her pupils don't grow in size over the course of the series, so I'm not sure how accurate that is. In contrast to Lain's pinpoint pupils are the rest of the characters, whose pupils dilate in fear or intoxication several times. Mind-altering drugs appear in Layer 2 with the fictional nanomachine drug Excella, and are referenced in Layer 9, which recounts the real-life studies of Dr. John Lilly.
インディオの麻薬物質とアイソレーションタンクによる感覚遮断実験によって人間の無意識を探ろうとしたジョン・シー・リリーは 自らの実験中、宇宙的存在者とコミュニケーションネットワークを介して接続していると考えた。彼を導く存在をリリーは ECCO 地球暗号制御局と呼んだ。後にリリーはイルカとのコミュニケーションに転身する。イルカは超音波により水中のかなり広範囲なネットワーキングを可能としている生物である。
Lily invented the first sensory deprivation chamber, a chamber where the user floats in water which is heated to close to body temperature. The chamber is soundproof and completely dark. Its purpose was to make it impossible to distinguish between oneself and the water around them. Dr. Lilly would sit in the tank for extended periods of time, sometimes under the effects of LSD. His experiences of bodily disassociation in the isolation tank could be described as a form of ego death, which is one of the central through lines of Serial Experiments Lain. Ego death is a loose term which has been used in a variety of contexts, including Buddhism and psychedelics, both of which are relevant to Serial Experiments Lain. The Buddha said that attachment was the source of human suffering, teaching that we should not grow attached too strongly to anything. Through meditation, one might even become detached from one's sense of self, until the difference between yourself and the world around you ceases to exist. This concept is called ego death, and it's no coincidence Lane's path to enlightenment and godhood also includes detachment from the ego. The psychedelic use of the term refers to how during strong LSD trips, users can experience the sensation of losing one's sense of self. It is not necessarily a negative experience, though it often induces panic or extreme anxiety. During ego death, an individual's personality and thoughts are subsumed completely in moment-to-moment experience, and reportedly, users gain an understanding of themselves as being one with the world around them. Whether ego death is a real thing, or whether it's meaningful in reality, doesn't matter. In Serial Experiments Lain, ego death is real, and it's something Lain goes through and comes to accept by the time we get to the last layer, ego. Here, Lain describes herself as the collection of Lane's and other people's minds, saying that is all she is. She then erases herself from the memories of everyone on Earth, detaching herself completely from the world and giving up all influence on events, content to merely observe the world from a distance. But if Lain only existed in people's minds, and she erased herself from the minds of everyone on Earth, then how could she continue to exist? When we make eye contact with the characters in the show, we look at the character just as much as the character looks at us. Lain exists in the minds of everyone in the show's world. There is one of her for each different viewpoint. Likewise, Lain exists in the minds of the real-life people watching the show. Remember, one of the series' main themes is that perception is reality. So if we perceive Lain, then she exists. She might not be physical, but a large point the show tries to make is that there's no barrier between what we think and what is. Late in the series, Lane's influence causes the structure of the show itself to collapse, as she cuts in to talk directly to the viewer. And the title card changes in form and placement. Just as Lain breaks through the barriers between reality and the wired within the show, she also breaks the barrier between the show and actual reality. After finishing the show, each viewer carries a memory of Lain with them, a version of Lain unique to their viewpoint. While Lain has been forgotten by everyone in her world, she continues to exist in our memories. Perhaps it is our memories of her which allow her to continue to exist, even though no one remembers her in the universe of the show. Because as long as people are talking and thinking about Serial Experiments Lain, she'll also be there, watching. Well, that was this video. Thanks for watching.